guys, in the prairie soil, this is like the top 2.5 feet. You see how it's super, super dark. You can't really see on this projection, but it's starting to get lighter down here as less carbon is concentrated down here. And so the prairie soil has a high amount of organic matter compared to the forest soil. But this is just another form of a completely holistic system. And in the prairie soil, the reason why there's so much organic matter is because the roots are much deeper than tree roots. They go well over 5 feet deep, very commonly, and then they break down. About 1/3 of the prairie roots break down each year. So a lot of organic matter gets concentrated in the soil. And these are key elements of having a ecologically thriving garden. In the leaf litter, there's all kinds of insects. This is samples from insects from leaf litter. And they're doing all kinds of jobs. Breaking leaves down, eating things that break leaves down. There's so much energy concentrated in the leaves that there's so many specialists that have found ways to utilize that energy, and then that energy works its way up into what we view as kind of like symbols of ecology, like the American robin, or the blue jay, or the garter snake, or the rat snake. Those symbols of ecology are all very directly connected to these little guys that are transferring all of this leaf litter energy and other organic matter energy upwards back into the food chain from plants. And this is Yarda Madeira. This bed, she allowed me to mulch it with the leaves. And basically, if you just run your leaves through a push mower that has a bag, that's a strong push mower. That's just about all you need to mulch up your tree leaves to the point that they don't blow really quickly, which, fall is windy. And if you just put unshredded leaves into these beds, there's going to be a decent amount of blowing unless they're in some type of low, like, garden border fence. That'll keep everything inside. But other than that, shredding them just a little bit will keep them in place until they get wet and then they mat up. This does not kill perennials. If your perennial dies from leaves being matted over it, that means it was going to die soon anyways. Because leaves have been matting over plants for millions of years, they shouldn't die from that. Now, it does suppress the lawn, which can be a good thing. But as far as perennials and landscape beds, these leaves matting up won't be an issue. It'll be beneficial. And it's beneficial because it starts attracting all these little guys. And all these little guys start taking advantage of all that food, and then all that food becomes mineralized to the point that plants can now take nutrients back out of those leaves. There, you end the cycle of fertilizing, which is not good for the soil life. And that's mostly because when you use chemical fertilizers, they're in a salt form. And the salt form irritates. Just imagine being covered in salt. That'd be irritating. But it irritates these guys. A lot of these insects that process and live in the soil, and especially the ones with very permeable bodies like grubs and worms, they're irritated by chemical salt applications. And that's why if you go through a farm field that gets, synthetic fertilizer each year, and you study the soil biology, you'll see it's very undiverse, very not diverse. And this is how you cease the endless cycle of fertilizing. This is a bed up at Spencer's Overlook in Eden Park that I maintained. This was about about 2 weeks after planting the annuals. They were pretty small. What this bed had was, so this is like maybe first week of June or last week of May. What they had was about 2 inches of compost concentrated over this whole bed, which again, is just the byproduct of those little guys doing their jobs. And the the annuals from the previous year, instead of being ripped out and taken away, they were mowed with a push mower, so all the organic matter stayed, just like it would in a forest, or just like it would in a prairie. And what that produced was something that I didn't really expect. It got really overgrown. Why is it like that now? Maybe it's just that one slide. So with just 2 inches of compost and mowing the annuals the year before, these plants grew so vigorously that they completely outgrew their design. And that just goes to show, like, this has absolutely no fertilizer application, just water, compost, and mowing the annuals in the year before, which didn't take any nutrients away. And it thrived without any input. One of the other things you can do in your yard, this was painted by, it's doing the same thing, it's not showing the whole slide. So this was painted by my friend Sarah. This is a no-mow, no-walk zone. This ring around here is just one of those 16-inch garden border fences. It's just a visual fence. It's not going to keep a dog out, but it'll tell people not to walk in there. Once you push it in the ground, it becomes 1-foot fence, so it's very small. And if you blow your leaves into this ring like that, they won't go anywhere because of the wall around it, the fence around it. And that's creating not only is it creating a spot where all those little leaf critters can concentrate and do their job and add to the thriving ability of your garden, it also reverses compaction. So we often don't know exactly what compacted soil is, or there's different levels, and we're only aware of certain levels. So every lawn that gets mowed has a certain level of compaction. And if you walk on it with your bare feet, you feel that most areas won't give unless a mole has gone through. And that's the only area that gives. That's really the only area that's healthy, is where the mole went through. Now if you go and walk in a forest that doesn't have a bunch of people going off trail everywhere all the time, you'll sink into the soil with your bare feet. A good ½ inch, even an inch or so. That's the level of compaction that these trees really need to survive, that forest level of basically non-compaction. The way we get that in our front yards and help these trees really breathe, because trees breathe through their roots, they don't breathe through their leaves. To help them breathe, we have to create these no-walk, no-mow zones around our trees, at least as wide as the canopy. And this will, through the leaf concentration, make the tree healthier and lengthen its lifespan, make it more drought tolerant, because water can go deeper into the soil when it's not compacted, less runoff. That's just one way to really start allowing your yard to thrive. Now it's showing the full slide again. And it's way over there. We're just going to deal with it. Oh, thanks. I had given up. So, as I just said, I won't go through this again. This is exactly what I just said. But one thing I didn't say was compacted soil is decreased nutrient availability, and it does encourage pests that prey on trees and shrubs under stress. The compaction, the lack of air in the soil. When you look at a pie chart of soil, it's often looked at as 3 to 5% organic matter, 50% mineral, broken down rock, 25% water, and like 25% or 20 to 25% water and 20 to 25% air. What we're lacking in our urban areas, because we are big animals, like if you look at us compared to other animals, we're really big and we walk around our yards. What we're lacking is the air part. And that's what the no mow, no walk zone allows to happen. So seeds, plants, we'll run through this really quick. Orange coneflower, Rudbeckia fulgida, is really shade tolerant and really beautiful and drought tolerant. And they will grow well on the edges and even underneath a lot of trees. Coreopsis, which is the gold flower, and penstemon. Penstemon will grow well in the full sun and in the full shade under trees. Coreopsis will grow on the edges of the canopy really well. Partridge pea will grow really well on the edge, and these are all very short, prolific plants that can just, seasonally beautify that no walk, no mow zone. This one's actually an annual, and bees love it, bumblebees. Partridge pea. Purple coneflower, very shade tolerant. It can grow up to the edge too, but it actually prefers more shade than sun. That's another good one to put in these no-mow zones. And when I say seed them, I mean kill the lawn like you would preparing for a prairie and seed these things, because you want full coverage of plants under there. This is going to be like a garden for you, not only making the trees healthy and having a place to put the leaves in the fall, but it's also basically a big pollinator garden in the same sense. Golden Alexander, great for pollinators, very shade tolerant as well. Would grow well under, open-grown trees. Gaillardia is just fun. It needs sun. It's not really locally native, but it's an American annual native plant, and it's just something that spices up the color because it looks pretty fun. Purple top is a very short, shade-tolerant native grass. This is the grass I suggest to seed with everything else, because it's going to be able to grow on the edge, but it's also going to be able to grow right under the tree because it's so shade-tolerant. And it just has this nice, if you ever looked at the highway about August, September, and you see like little purple areas where it just looks like sides of the highways are turning purple, dark purple. That's purple top growing in mass. So it has an ornamental effect, but it also, you want to have balance between grasses and wildflowers. So this is a good grass to balance out with your wildflower. Let me see how many slides we got, because we are definitely out of time. Okay. All right, I'm going to speed up just a little bit. Sorry about this. So, our local invasive plants. Like these are one of the most impactful things we can do on the 6% of land, rural, residential, metropolitan, is killing all these invasive plants. Because they're really concentrated here through horticulture and through other means, and they're spreading out into the rural areas from metropolitans. This is my hit list. Bush, the most strongly established, bush honeysuckle, Siberian elm, which isn't talked about very often because I just think people don't know what it is. But it's definitely more prominent than tree of heaven. Tree of heaven, garlic mustard. Now, those were trees and shrubs. These are, or at least garlic mustard and lesser celandine, are actually herbaceous wildflowers. Lesser celandine is blooming now. Garlic mustard will be blooming in probably about 3 weeks. Ornamental pears, you guys see them all on the highways right now. You know what that is. And Russian olive and multiflora rose. Russian olive / autumn olive. People went to some nurseries that are into making selling medicinal and edible plants. We'll sell Russian olive and autumn olive because the olive has some medicinal or edible quality. Don't buy them. On the uprise, barberry, burning bush, Prunus avium, sweet cherry. You have to Google Prunus avium. to see what it looks like. I can't really describe it. And privet. These are invasive heavily in other areas, but those areas don't already have honeysuckle as their dominant invasive. But I've seen where, like in Cincinnati Nature Center, where there was a whole hillside removed of honeysuckle, and me and my friend were hiking it. There was these little 1-foot red stems everywhere, and once we got close, we saw that the honeysuckle was being replaced by burning bush. Now that it was gone. So we got to get these out of our landscapes. They're the cause of our problems. I mean, our landscapes are the cause of huge ecological problems. These multi-million-year-old ecosystems cannot function with a new community member that acts like honeysuckle or that acts like pear. It doesn't work that way. It's happening too quick. The systems can't evolve that quickly. So it's up to us. In email, I'll give you removal methods, and you'll have links to the plants. So, trees and shrubs that strengthen local food webs. I'm not going to get complicated with this because it's not complicated. Going locally native, it's difficult to go wrong. So if you see something growing in the woods, it's a good plant to plant. It may not, you may have to figure out how to plant it. Like if it's a spice bush, maybe you put it on the eastern side of your house where it gets southern and western shade. But it's a good plant to plant. If you see it in Hamilton County Park growing in a prairie, one of their prairie restorations, or at Cedar Creek, then it's probably a good plant to plant. It's really, it's not too complicated. I guess the rules are keep it native, because even if a Russian sage supports tons of bumblebees, what is it supporting underground? What's interacting with the root system? What's using the stems? What can't use the stems? What caterpillars are using the leaves? Ecology is way more complicated than the pollination. So keeping it native, keeping it mostly locally native, like within 150 miles, maybe within 100 or 200 miles, and using things that were in our ecosystems locally that you can see in the parks. I have a tri-state spreadsheet that I've been developing over the past 2 years. It's really complicated, but there's some cool things you can do with it at this point before I figure out how to simplify it. If in your neighborhood you see healthy plants, this is on my website, you'll get a link through email. If you see healthy trees that are colored orange, like red maple, yellow buckeye, pignut hickory, mockernut hickory, this is a screenshot so I can't scroll it, but sassafras and black gum are two others. Those are acidic soil indicators, meaning that locally, when I cross-studied the soil surveys with the forest types, those species never grew in over like 6.8 pH. So that means you can plant their associates. So you can plant all the ones that are in white, which are generalists, and that would be a pretty somewhat sustainable choice. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's a lot better than just planting blindly. And the yellow ones are pretty adaptable, just like the white ones. They just lean towards acidic soil, like shagbark hickory. And then the blue ones, if you have alkaline soil, blue ash, which you can't plant, Kentucky coffee tree, shellbark, Ohio buckeye, bur oak, Shumard oak, maybe one other. Those are ones that you would plant with those, and then you can always plant the generalist, and there's a good chance of those being successful. So you'll find that on my website, link through email. So bed management. A niche can be described as available water, soil, sunlight for plants. I just made that definition up. Open niches invite new plants to germinate and mature. So, and then we label them weeds. So if we're looking for least management and least chemical applications, we have to move away from these big beds with individual plants and mulch in between, because there's way too many niches available, and nature's just going to keep on trying to heal herself. The germination of weeds is just trying to heal herself. So we have to cover those areas with plants And there's affordable ways to do it, and there's expensive ways to do it. You can have a simple seed mix to cover a bed using like those plants from the no-mow zone, like black-eyed Susan and partridge pea and penstemon, short, non-obnoxious plants. And they can be, you can just seed the bed with that and then plant your design into it. But you do want to get these beds fully covered. When starting a new bed or reworking an old one, make it your goal to fill the whole bed with plants. This is what I call prairie intelligence. For budgeting, you can plant the temporary plants like the Gaillardia, the annuals, the Rudbeckia, and then plant your perennials into that matrix. And this is Piet Oldhoff. He's a German, I think he's a German landscape architect. And he uses a lot of American native plants in Germany, which are probably invasive over there. but he also has created a lot of landscapes in America too. And his methodology is, big masses of very interesting shaped plants. And this is what you can do with native plants. Like, if you have enough space and you have a budget to do it, planting with a mix of shrubs and masses of perennials that have different qualities. I'm going to send you a link to his book where you can learn about his methodology. Creating these kinds of landscapes, these are the kind of landscapes where if you engage people with native plants in this format, that is going to be potentially a culturally transformative experience. With food, with beauty like this, we definitely have to do this at a high quality if it's going to have an effect bigger than our yards, meaning the big picture landscape. And again, insect beauty is beautiful in its own way. Just the activity of life, the migrating swallowtails on the Joe Pies, that's all, I think that's all positive for changing our culture, which has created this predicament. And once again, engaging through food. These are persimmon cultivars, and all ages from children. Children are really easy to engage with anything, but maybe not for long, but at least engage them. But food, definitely. Those are harvests of chestnuts. So last words. A garden that can positively change our community's relationship with the environment at large is a garden making way for ecology to thrive again. So my personal opinion is we should place our energy on focusing and creating landscapes that are highly engaging, buzzing with life, and stunningly beautiful, while exemplifying how we can grow to choose these eco-alternatives to our major land uses in this country. And that is all I have for you guys.